is still in place?
Andrea, no sane mind can think of nuclear war or nuclear weapons. What needs to be done is that this thing should be immediately nipped in the bud. Where it is heading right now, my fear is that there are 900,000 troops in the valley, and they've locked in 8 million people. Now the fear is that once they lift the curfew, there's going to be bloodshed. And that's why we want the president to intervene before things go a step further. And that's really my concern right now. And I mainly came to the UN to raise this with the world leaders.
Mr. Prime Minister, this is Ayman Mohideen, and I was curious, sir, to pick up on your point, wanting the United States to mediate. You've obviously sat next to President Trump, and you've been dealing with this administration. Has this administration in any way, shape, or form asked you for any type of quid pro quo in exchange for mediating? And if so, what might that be? What does the U.S. want from Pakistan in order to try to mediate this conflict?
This is a completely separate issue. It concerns over 1 billion people of the Indian subcontinent. So this, the United States #1, but United Nations Security Council is the other option. Or the US could operate through the UN Security Council, because there are 11 resolutions by the Security Council on Kashmir. So that's one area. But quite separately, the other two neighbors of Pakistan, one is Afghanistan, the other is Iran. We are trying our best. We are speaking to Iran. I spoke to President Trump, and he thought I should try and mediate between the US and Iran, a nuclear deal. And the other is Afghanistan, which again is in the interest of Pakistan, that there's peace there. I mean, there's 4 decades of conflict. People of Afghanistan are suffering. There's no quid pro quo. I mean, it's in our interest that there's peace there. We were sad that just when the deal was about to be signed, it was broken up, because dialogue and fighting are going on simultaneously, and this was always going to happen. But there is no military solution in Afghanistan, and that should be obvious after 19 years. So it is in our interest that there's peace in both Afghanistan and Iran. The problem with Iran is that if there's a conflict, our country's developing world is going to take a real beating, because the oil prices will shoot up. And in most of our developing world, we have these trying to manage our balancing our budgets. And this will just throw us off. So it's in the interest of actually the world that this Iran conflict does not take place.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Prime Minister, Jeff Goldberg from The Atlantic, just to follow on your statement that Donald Trump would be the best mediator for you, 2 related questions. One is, what specific skills do you think he brings to mediating the Kashmir dispute? The second related question is, how do you assess his handling of the Iran files so far in his presidency?
U.S. is, again, I repeat, the most powerful country in the world, and the U.S. can mediate. The U.S. has the clout. Problem I'm facing right now is, unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, and it's being realistic, countries look upon India as a market of 1.2 billion people. And that's what I'm sad to say, that's what the Indian Prime Minister is, that's his leverage. And that's why he's done something so incredible, revoking the Constitution, going against UN resolutions, and he's actually boxed in these people. And so US being the strongest country in the world, with leverage in the UN Security Council, and just as the biggest trading partner of India, US has the best leverage, and that's what Mr. Trump has in his hands. About Iran, you know, I mean, I kept opposing. I kept saying there is no military solution, only because you only have to know the history of Afghanistan. I mean, the British as a superpower went and 3 times failed. Soviets killed 1 million Afghans in the 80s, failed. And how you knew that this was going to be a war that is just would not have achieved any results. Someone should ask, I mean, if I was an American, I would ask that $1.5 trillion at least have been spent in Afghanistan. What have we achieved in this? And then I hear some people saying that, actually, no, we should sort of keep the military or keep this going. This will go on for another 19 years. The taxpayer in U.S. is going to keep pouring in money in there. While the U.S. was pouring money in Afghanistan in this futile war, the Chinese were developing first world infrastructure, and you just have to go to China to see the way their infrastructure is. And I'm in New York, and I'm watching the car bumping around here. That money was wasted.
You do not sound right now like a prime minister from Pakistan. You sound like a voter from the Bronx who would complain about the infrastructure, our money being spent on wars in Afghanistan.
This is a very difficult situation. It's brewing up for a while. But I'm an anti-war person. I do not believe wars solve problems. I mean, you go after one problem and it gives birth to 5 other different problems, and therefore, I don't believe that these because you see, it has unintended consequences. Every war which I know, Afghanistan, Pakistan joining the U.S. war in Afghanistan. Each time we were told this is a matter of weeks. And, in Pakistan, we lost 70,000 people died in this war on terror when we participated. And Musharraf told us, our general, that it's only a matter of weeks. So war with Iran is very complex. Once it starts, no one knows where it's going to go. And so therefore, always conflicts should be avoided. Always.
Mr. Prime Minister, Joe Scarborough here. The United States and Pakistan, of course, as you know better than anybody, we have had at times a tumultuous relationship. The Pakistanis have believed through the years that Americans have been unreliable partners. We have not followed through on weapons deals. At times, the Pakistanis believe we have pushed them in directions that are not in their national interest. And, of course, Americans have had concerns with the Pakistanis now. Just pulling back from the events of this week, even this month, give us, if you will, your best read on U.S.-Pakistani relations right now. Are we in a better place today than we were, say, 5-10 years ago?
Definitely. This is the best relationship Pakistan had with the U.S. in almost 2 decades. But let me just give you a brief history. Pakistan joined, U.S. and Pakistan got together against the Soviets when they invaded Afghanistan.